If you like the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this.
What happened when you caught your SO physically cheating on you with others? How did it go down? My ex-fiancé had no job, no car, or anything, so I was working a lot of overtime and doing odd jobs to keep us afloat. He claimed that he didn't like the job offers he got, so the deal was that he could stay at home and cook and clean until he found a job. I started noticing that he had bruising on his thighs one night as we were taking a shower together. He told me that he was trying out parkour to try to get some exercise. He's extremely clumsy, so I believed it. One day, he came home with his best friend and he had hickeys on his neck. He told me that his best friend had done it as a joke. They're always doing things like this to each other, so again, I believed it. I started noticing that anytime he was on the computer and I'd walk by, he'd get really nervous and shield the screen from me. I confronted him about it, and he just said that it was his personal business and that he wouldn't do it to me. Most of the time he just played World of Warcraft, so I didn't understand what the big deal was. We started to argue about him not having a job, and he'd get so mad at me during these arguments, that he'd just drive off in my car and stay gone for days. I'd be so worried about him. I decided then that I would get him a cell phone so that in case of emergencies, he could call me, so at least I'd know he was safe. Things go back to normal after he comes back, explains that he just needed a few days to himself from the stress, and that he was actively searching for a job, even if he didn't like the jobs that were offered to him. Fast forward about a month, he still doesn't have a job but works temp jobs until something more permanent comes in, and I'm behind on the bills because I just can't pay them. My job offers me overtime, so I take it. My fiancé tells me he's going to our college's anime club night to blow off some steam. When I come home, he's nowhere to be found, so I decide to go to anime club myself and blow off some steam as well. Well, anime club had already let out half an hour before. Confused, I call his cell phone. No answer. I go back home, hoping he had just went to the store or something and I'd missed him. No one's home, so I call again, and hear his phone ringing by the computer. His Yahoo Messenger was still open, and he had left a conversation open. Since he was so apprehensive about me seeing his internet doings, I decided to read. Apparently he had been talking to this girl for about 6 months. He was telling her how I never had time for him, that I was dragging him down financially, the only thing he really wanted from me was my car, and that I never had sex with him anymore. We had a pretty active sex life. Scrolling up through all of their convos, she was kind enough to give him her address. So, I decide to walk over there. He took my car. I would walk to work since it wasn't that far, and left the car for him to go job searching. When I get over to the girl's house, I didn't have to knock or anything. The curtains in the front windows were open, and I saw my 125-pound fiancé getting ridden by a morbidly obese girl on the living room couch, with her young 8 or 9-year-old son in the dining room in full view of everything. Guess where all the bruising on his thighs came from? I walked back home and waited on him to get back at 3 a.m. and confronted him. He tried to deny it, until I brought up the fact that she had a young son. We fought, and he begged to try to make it work. Being the dumbass that I am, I decided to try to make it work. Eventually I left him for good. He never got a job, and he never stopped cheating. Even a lesbian friend of mine told me that he tried to force himself onto her. Now I'm happily engaged to my boyfriend of 7 years, and I still see my ex around town from time to time. He's homeless. I also see the morbidly obese girl at Walmart from time to time riding around in her little motorized wheelchair. So, I know this is going to be completely buried. I was seeing this guy, and we had gone on a few dates, and he was cool. An airline pilot, had his own 2-seater airplane, a house, and a couple dogs. We'd go out and grab ice cream or something and then just chill afterwards, playing video games, listening to music, etc. So then one night he asks me over to his place unexpectedly for a party. I say, sure, why not? Then and there, in front of everyone, he asks if I'll be his girlfriend. Cue cheesy applause and cheers. Plus some free beer. I liked him, so I said alright. The next few hours were just chilling and not doing anything. Then he disappeared into a back room with several girls and came back out half naked and absolutely covered in hickeys. So, I asked him and he brushed it off. Well, I was too drunk to drive, so I stayed around to sober up a bit before leaving. I just sat on the couch and watched TV. I hate TV, and everyone else was outside. And about half an hour of TV later, he comes inside with a gaggle of nude girls around him, and drops his pants and demands a blowjob. Didn't ask for it, and when I questioned him, he demanded it again and grabbed at me. So I did the only logical thing, bitch slapped him, picked up my shoes and keys and left. One of the girls was screaming, and one of the guys had full-on picked her up so she wouldn't come after me. I drove a couple blocks, and called a friend to come drive me home. I got a phone call the next day, from his best mate asking what the fuck was going through my head when I decided to bitch slap a drug dealer, in his own home, surrounded by coked up lackeys. Also informing me I had bruised his face and his cheekbone was all swollen. I'm still proud of that, and that if I hadn't driven off, I probably would have been beaten by the crazy girls. Oh, and, by the way, did I want to come over to snort some cocaine with them later? I told them to shove off and leave me be. They kept harassing and threatening me for ages until I told them they could leave me alone or I'd go to the cops despite threats I had better not. They left me alone. I dated a guy once for about a year. We had hit a rough patch and decided to break up. A few weeks pass and we both decide we've been crazy. We apologize for the things we've done and decide we're going to work things out. He tucks me into bed one night, we lived in the same apartment building, and tells me how much he loves me. He asks me if I'll come back to his place where everyone is hanging out. I tell him I have work and just need to get to sleep. About halfway through the night I start getting an awful sick feeling in my stomach. I'm lonely and I just want to be with him. I walk over to his place and knock on his door. I text him and call him a few times. No answer. I figured he was just sleeping, so I knocked louder trying to wake him up. Eventually his roommate answers. I apologized for being so loud and head to my ex's room. Just before reaching the door I see my roommate, stark-ass naked, in his doorway. Giggling. I broke down. He came out and starting apologizing and we talked until 6 a.m. He explains that he'd never gotten over some of the stuff we went through and he just needed to get this out of his system in order to forgive me. I understood that, so I forgave him and we moved on. I ended up consoling my hungover roommate as she cried the following day because she had cheated on her so with my boyfriend. 3 days later I made dinner for him and my roommate. We cuddled on the couch a bit afterward. I mention that he's paying too much attention to her for my comfort. We say goodnight, he tucks me into bed again, tells me how much he loves me, and begs me to come back to his place. He says he just wants to sleep. I explained to him that I couldn't stand the idea of sleeping in the bed he just fucked her in. I needed time. He goes home. The following day he comes to my place after work. And we sit down to watch some TV together. He says he has to tell me something. And with the biggest shit-eating grin on his face. He says, I fucked Kathleen again last night. I slapped him in the face and went to my bedroom and started packing. He and Kathleen are still together from what I hear. It's been years and I actually just got married in June. Apparently he also got fat and developed a drinking problem. I was a nanny to 2 lovely little girls in college. The mom owned a chain of restaurants and the dad traveled a lot for work. He was a total douche. In the 5 years I worked for them, I saw him maybe 4 times. One of those times, I had put the girls to bed and he came in covered in dirt. He owned a company that worked with a lot of machinery, I won't bore you, and said he needed a shower, so I said goodbye and showed myself out, but then realized that I left my jacket in the bathroom. I went back in and called to him from his bedroom doorway that I left the jacket. This man came out covering his junk with one hand and my jacket in the other, and asked me if I wanted to hang around. WTF. No, dude. Anyway. The wife found some printed emails that were pretty intense when she had to borrow his work truck. Turns out this dude was sleeping with his secretary. So she called me over one Saturday because she had some business to take care of. She never came home that night. I called her office the next morning and no one had seen her. I called her husband and his office and got voicemails. So I hung out. Monday morning, still nothing. I call grandma. She knows nothing. Finally, Monday afternoon I get a phone call that she's in jail and needs me to come bail her out. So I pull out $8,000 from her family safe, drop the kids off at the neighbors, and go bail her ass out. She went to the woman's house and found her husband's car in the driveway. She walked right in and found her husband and the woman in the shower together, and proceeded to beat the living shit out of both of them with a baseball bat. All three of them went to jail. The secretary and the husband for something else. I think she had a warrant and they found drugs in the house. Something like that. I got a Christmas card from them this year. They're still married. I got off work early and went to surprise my boyfriend at his apartment. When I pulled up I noticed a car of a woman he worked with. He's a ballroom dance instructor. I didn't think anything of it, so I went upstairs and knocked on his door, and I heard things get quiet and no one answered. I could hear them talking, so I called him and texted and knocked again. When nothing happened I started to assume the worst and went into psycho mode. I yelled that I had seen her car in the parking lot and would do serious damage if they didn't open the fucking door. After 30 minutes of threatening I went to get something heavy out of my car to damage the bitch's car. They opened the door and played dumb, saying they were having dinner and didn't hear a knock. As the bitch tried to sneak out, my boyfriend said we should sit down and talk, meaning all three of us. I told her to get the fuck out. I saw popcorn buckets on the counter and sodas, and he said they had dinner and went to the movies and assured me that no cheating had went down other than what sounded like a date to me. I asked him why he didn't answer the door and just explain that to me, and he said he was afraid of what it looked like. I looked at him confused and walked out. I apparently made quite the scene as the neighbors asked if I was okay because I sat on the stairs for a moment to collect myself. The other girl tried to get in contact with me through Facebook. Turns out they had been doing this for a while, but she understood that he loved me and she was not right for him and apologized. I have never talked to her. I did get the full story from my boyfriend. He had even had her drop him back off at my house when I thought he was away for a work trip. The very first night I had met her was a night I drove him up to an open mic 2 hours away, and we all had dinner, and that's when their relationship started. I kinda saw red flags, but hey, you want to believe the person you love isn't fucking a married woman. Yes, that's right, she was married too. They were in fact perfect for each other. I moved in with my boyfriend boss. Lost that job because reasons. Got a new job, fell head over heels for a coworker. Blah blah blah. I bring him home one night after I'm sure my boyfriend is asleep. We're shit loaded. I tell him he can sleep in the guest bedroom. We both know that's not the plan. All lights are off when we get home, so I assume boyfriend's in bed. I take him out on the balcony and we start making out fiercely. Boyfriend wasn't asleep, he was out on a run. Comes back, sees us from the ground floor. Comes up into act, slams door. Yelling ensues. Coworker excuses himself but texts me seconds after to remind me he can't get out of our gated community without me. Also, his car is at the bar a million miles away. I excuse myself from the fight. Come home the next night and tell him what he saw was true. I did kiss him, I cheated, and I'm sorry, but we're over. He wouldn't accept us being over and thought not letting me out of the lease we both signed was a way to make me stay with him. I offered to find him an app he approved of, pay the movers and all deposits. I offered to leave but find him a roommate. Nothing. He simply wouldn't let me move out. I moved out. He assaulted my movers' friends. Good times. Boyfriend of 4 years and I are at a New Year's party. He gets really drunk and starts saying how much he loves me. Then things go south. He pulls me aside and confesses to sleeping with 8 different women since year 2 in our relationship. I don't scream, I don't hit him, I just sit there. I forgave him silently, and helped him sober up enough for me to take him home. On the hour drive back, he gives me the names of the girls, 2 of which I was friends with. When I put him to bed, I Facebook message all of them, saying I forgave them for sleeping with my boyfriend, and I didn't want drama. 6 replied, saying how sorry they were. 2, one of my friends, blocked me and/or didn't reply. I spent the rest of the night trying to fall asleep by the man I still, despite all he had told me, loved. He woke up the next morning, and I asked him if he remembered what he told me. He said, yes, and burst into tears. He told me that he had no idea why he did it, but that he would just find himself in those situations. Since we had a lot of mutual friends, I didn't tell any of them what happened, only that we decided to take a break. I am not even mad that he slept with other people, only that he lied to me about it. I had asked him over the years if he was. I know that chances were slim that he would fess up point blank, and he lied. That's the only real thing that bothers me. Is that weird? Me and an ex-partner were going through a tough time, breaking up, and I'd moved back home to my parents' place. One evening we'd been chatting via text message about possibly trying to fix things between us, and I said it was too late for me to go down to the house but I'd meet up with him the following day to talk. But then decided I would go round and rushed to catch the last train. As I got near our old house I got this really apprehensive knot in my stomach and broke into a run. Let myself into the house and saw my boyfriend in the kitchen pouring wine, and to my right was a friend of his who I absolutely despised because she came onto the scene once we'd been together for around 2 years and made no secret of the fact she wanted him. Filled with rage I controlled myself from punching either of them. Instead I stalked over to my boyfriend and just said, "What the fuck?" The girl freaked out and ran out of the house. Which amused me greatly because she was literally about 3 times heavier than me, so I couldn't really have done much damage to her no matter how tempting it might be. His answer to my, "What the fuck?" was she was there to help him pack our house up. At midnight. Whilst drinking wine. Yeah, could have come up with a better story than that, buddy. We had a massive argument regarding the fact we'd been talking earlier about salvaging the relationship. Things got heated and he whacked my head against the wall. He wasn't a very nice guy, truth be told. I was an unwitting accessory to cheating once. I had a friend who knew this guy that saw me at my best friend's memorial service and wanted to hook up with me. Yeah, I know it's bad, I was in a really bad place in my life. So I get his number and we start talking on the phone. He's really sweet and was basically the first guy to ever actually seem interested in me. High school lol. Anyway, we meet for a movie, cuddle, I end up spending the night at his place. Saw him a couple more times and then he stopped answering my calls. I was just browsing Facebook one day, randomly clicking on names of people who went to my school, and I clicked on this one kid. His profile picture was of him and the guy the first was seeing, in Italy. I was like, WTF. Anyway, turns out that it was his boyfriend, and he was studying in Germany for a semester. The dude was sleeping around with a bunch of different guys while his boyfriend was gone. The boyfriend messages me and was like, "So, I heard you slept with my boyfriend." I said, yeah, I was unaware he was seeing someone. Several people lied to my face. He was really gracious about it, saying how it wasn't my fault and he didn't blame me. Dumped his ass, too. The dude now works as a bouncer in a gay nightclub and sleeps with like 5 different guys every week. Gross. I hate the gay world. My BF of 2 years went out with one his guy friends who was going through a breakup. I went out for drinks with my girlfriends and I thought everything was fine. I had a friend visiting and almost went over to his place to sleep so she could have my bed. Go to sleep and I wake up to see he hadn't responded to my texts. I just knew that something was up. I stopped by his place to grab my dog's leash from and bring him his favorite coffee drink. I walk in and instantly spot a pair of high heels. I dropped off the coffee and walked in his bedroom. I found him naked in bed with another girl. She woke up first after I started yelling at him. I grabbed my picture on the nightside table and shoved it in her face. I could tell by the look in her eyes that she honestly had no clue that I existed. I walked over to his side of the bed and asked him how he could do this to me, how could he betray me in the bed that I made that day. I stormed out of his room. I managed to clear the entire bar, breaking all the beer bottles and wine glasses and knocking over that ridiculous coffee. I managed to drive to the restaurant where my friends were waiting outside. Broke down and was bawling in front of everyone. They went and grabbed all my clothes, shoes, bike and gear, and as much of my things as they could from his condo. Another friend came and drove me home. I was definitely experiencing minor shock. I don't really remember the few days after it happened. It changed my life completely and who I am as a person in positive and negative ways.